Happy Friday, everyone. Today, I want to talk about some of my pet peeves when it comes to communication and what people are taught about communication. So, as I was thinking about today's topic, like so many thoughts came to my head. I really want to try to keep it to only three pet peeves. I have a lot more, but I want to offer some more helpful directions and things you can focus on if you want to improve your communication. All right, let me start from the beginning. So first of all, communication. As you know, I work with people that want to change careers or do work they love, grow their business. But what I'm going to talk about today is not just about work. Okay, you can apply in any type of communication, including with the people you're closest to. All right, so pet peeve number one. You should focus on what you say and the words you use. All right. No, like I think people think way too much about what words to say and the words to use. And if your communication is not landing well, is not working for you, the direction to look towards instead is your listening. Okay, yes, you're listening. No, not the other person's listening, you're listening. Okay. Why? I can promise you that unless you've done some training on listening, and not just one training, but for a while, you're not as good of a listener as you think you are. Okay, I was shocked when I learned that about myself. And I was shocked as somebody that, I think most people would have said I was a good listener and, I'm great at taking notes and all these kind of things. And when I really was confronting and had to pay attention and was guiding towards the way, noticing how much and how well I was listening, I was absolutely shocked by what I found. And what I found is very common. So there's a lot of you're thinking about what you're gonna say next instead of truly listening. You're thinking about whether you agree or disagree, or you're judging instead of truly listening. And you are not actually listening. Like you don't notice how many words you're simply not hearing because you're distracted, thinking about the stuff that I mentioned before, just not tuned in. Okay. So there's a lot more about the way to listen, but I think, for every blog post on the internet that says this is what you should, how you should talk to your partner about, or this is what you should say to your boss, if for every one of those posts you instead spend 5 minutes on how to listen, your communication would improve in like a week, okay, or in a day, let alone a week. So it's really a big pet peeve of mine, how much we keep teaching people how to communicate, like what to say, instead of how to listen. All right, I can go on forever. This is a little bit of a venting post today. So stick with me. All right, okay. Pet peeve number two. You have to tell people how you feel all the time and teach them how to communicate with you and all that kind of stuff. I actually disagree. I really disagree. You don't have to share your feelings and you don't have to tell people how to communicate with you all the time. Number one, go back to listening, more important. But number two, it's really important to understand, and I know some of you are gonna disagree with me, and I know some of you might even get upset that I'm saying this, but I'm really gonna say it. Your feelings come from your thinking, not from what the other person says. Okay? It's not what the other person says. So it's very important. Now, it doesn't mean that it's okay for people to say whatever they want, and it doesn't mean that you shouldn't tune in to the other person and try to use the best words and all these kind of things, or be kind. It doesn't mean any of that. But it's very important to understand that if we live in a world in a reality in which we think that what other people say to us is what causes our feelings, and we need to control how people talk to us, or the words they use in order for us to be okay, we are locking ourselves in a view of reality that's not helpful to our well-being. Okay. And so this is, again, I understand if this upsets you, but it took me a long time to see it. But once I saw it, it really freed me to be more present to my experience. It gave me lightness in a lot of situations, and it did not take away my ability to understand if somebody was being unkind, or if somebody, I didn't want to have much to do with them. It didn't take away that ability. In fact, it liberated me from concerns about making that choice. All right. Ooh, that merits like 10 hours of video right there. Okay. Third pet peeve, a third pet peeve. Well, let me think, because I think I just covered two right there. What is my third pet peeve? About communication, about communication. Oh yeah, I can't believe I was gonna forget this. That communication is about agreeing or disagreeing or being right. And sadly and scarily, this is where most of our teachings about communication start from and end, which is how to be right, okay, or who is right. And I find that if you're in except in certain types of discussions where that might be the agreed end goal of the discussion, in most cases, if your intention is to prove that you're right, or to convince somebody else that you're right, or to have to agree and disagree and go back and forth until you agree and all that kind of stuff, unfortunately, that type of communication is much more likely to create bad feelings and disagreement and conflict than actual true communication. So I know this is another one that might be very difficult to see, because usually the default is like, yes, but what when I'm really right? What about when I'm really right, right? Consider that the more the goal is to prove you're right, the less you are present to the conversation, the less good you get at listening, and the more resistant and defensive the other person gets. Okay, and I am saying this as somebody who was always very good at winning the argument and was very attached to be right. And sometimes, I'm still very attached. But I was very like, somebody saying this to me was like, what are you talking about? What's wrong with you? Like, of course, the point is being right. And of course, I'm right. And let me give you 3 examples why it would be so dangerous to not try to be right. Like, this was a huge thing for me. Okay. So I'm not saying as somebody that didn't struggle with it. But once I started to really understand how we listen, connect, and even change, I started to see how trying to be right and making that the goal of communication is very counterproductive. So this is another really long conversation. I know I told you I have lots of pet peeves about communication, but just try next time you are in a conversation. Notice if you default to the being right intention, and then intentionally shift to another intention for, it's a lot of intentions here, another intention for that conversation. It could be to just be present. It could be to understand the other person better. It could be to enjoy the moment. It could be to be more loving. It could be to be curious about the point of view. It could be to be self-expressed, for you to be really self-expressed and to really say and authentic, right? Without the attachment that they have to say you're right, but you're gonna, be authentic and self-expressed. So you can pick whatever you want. Notice how, number one, it might feel really weird. To me, it felt really weird not to have to be right. I really had to work at this because I had so much that no, the point is that I'm right or somebody's right here. Okay. I had a lot of negative thinking about if that's not the point, it means I'm wishy-washy and nothing will ever change in the world. I had a lot of thoughts about that. But then by experience, and that's why my invitation is to experience it, by experience, I found that when I wasn't so attached to being right, a lot of things would emerge. Okay. Sometimes I more easily would shift my thinking, not because I would get wishy-washy, but simply, oh, I could hear something interesting. And so I could expand my point of view, right? Sometimes it would make it easy to just say, oh, actually, I'm wrong, like I actually, all right, I can see your point. And sometimes it will simply become something where, no, I still am right. I still, have my opinion, have my point of view. I believe very strongly, but I could be heard a little bit more. Or I could leave the conversation without being all triggered and upset and okay, maybe I can think more productively of how to get my point across, right? So a lot of things change when you understand communication differently. And I'm really gonna say that we do a really crappy job in general of teaching people how to communicate. And when you start understanding in a radically different way how communication works, like what really works, it's a game changer. It's a game changer at work. It's a game changer in your relationship. It's a game changer for your own well-being and effectiveness. So for today, I want to leave you with this. You can just guess why communication is on my mind so much this morning, but I really hope that you will look in these directions of learning how to be a better listener rather than focusing so much on what you say, understanding and understanding at a deep level that our upsets come from our thinking, what we're thinking, and then ultimately nobody has the power to really upset us, by what they say. It's our thinking that really makes a difference. And number three, that there are many intentions we can get and engage in a conversation with. It doesn't have to be right. And then when you notice your attachment to being right and you actually open up to different intentions for a communication, you can really become so much more effective at whatever it is that you want to talk about and explore. All right, I'm going to leave it like this for today and see you next week.